So when we're developing, broadly speaking, there are three, roughly. So first of all, there's the IT administrator. Now, this person is responsible for the ongoing maintenance of the platform, for the fundamental platform, the servers where the cloud has been deployed, the data sources, backup, these sorts of things. But at the same time, these are their core function in any case. So it's about the fundamental technical resilience of the platform and the configuration. So that is then ring fenced. So they don't have to worry about anything downstream. So as long as they have the data sources backed up, firewalls in place, just the fundamental IT security, the IT administrator function has done their job. Then the next tier down is the power administrator. Now, these administrators are users of the Encanvas Cloud client. They would never log on to, for instance, a desktop on the server. That's not their realm. They are power users of the client, and they can access and edit and work with the broader spectrum of functionality within the app fabric. So, for instance, they can maybe change the login pages or the user functions. They can probably do and manage and run information flows, these sorts of functions, view logs, these things. They can, of course, permissions for these people can be set on any given app fabric according to the requirements, and indeed according to any specific user. So these are the broad groups we're talking about, but it can be very specific if required. Then the third broad group is just the fundamental analysts. So these chaps are building the canvases. They are working with the data, but they don't have access to the data. They don't have access to the source. And also, when they're looking at the app fabric deliberately, and this is what they want to see, their view is very simple. They just see the small portion of the app fabric in which their canvases are going. They don't need to worry, don't want to worry about the broader umbrella. They just have their portion that they are working with and responsible for.
And you see that is good for security?
It is, because these analysts, as trustworthy as they may be, they don't have access to, for instance, the entire data sources and everything. They're never responsible for logins and user names, passwords. They are shielded from all of that, and it in turn is shielded from them. So it comes down to just fundamentally, regardless of the trustworthiness, are their laptops encrypted? The data never resides on their laptop. It really is just fundamentally secure from the ground up, just in terms of the fundamental architecture of the way they're interacting with the app fabric.
So the business analysts themselves really don't seem to be getting involved in these security capabilities. That seems to be more the IT level, is it?
By design, because that's not their job. That's not where we want them to be spending their time. We want them to be 100% focused on providing the business value. Then the IT, the guys who are really, really good at this, they can put all of their effort and energy into that portion of the platform.
Andrew, enterprise identity management is such a big topic at the moment. How does Encanvas help?
An Encanvas app fabric will sit within whatever existing structures are in place within the enterprise. There may well be Active Directory setup or all sorts of different authentication, and any given app fabric, the permissions can be built to model the organization as it stands. But then another very important function and factor is that quite often external access will be required to a system. So obviously these people may well not be in your Active Directory. So therefore you'll need to have a separate source of permissions and control that of course the app can provide. And that will then allow these external users to connect. But then there are other ways, such as, for instance, a particular app might have a particular permission, a very specific permission, just that app that you want to assign to users. Now, rather than have to make any edits to your Active Directory structure, which are costly, can mess it up, one can end up with a very, very messy structure potentially. Instead, that permission can be held just within the app. And that permission can be attached to the Active Directory user who's logged in, or indeed equally to the external user who's logged in. So it means that the permissions can be very specific and very, very powerful and very pervasive if it needs to be within an app, whilst at the same time sitting within the existing structures within an enterprise. There are many ways, actually, that we look to prevent these sorts of attacks. Just to take one example, when the cloud client is connecting to the cloud server, it requires pre-shared information to even open the fundamental connection. So without that, you literally can't even offer up your username and password. You can't connect to it. It's one of the things that just makes it fundamentally secure. Also, within the cloud configuration, there are configurable timeouts, how many failed attempts, how long a lockout would be, various different actions that would trigger a lockout. So we're very quick, and the focus has been really on ensuring the security and also ensuring that these things continue to be up and running.
And Andrew, a lot of people are very nervous about using database systems via HTML browsers, even if they're secured in some way. When it comes to using databases and the risks of potential security breaches there, are we doing anything in the Encanvas architecture to prohibit that, to prevent those things from happening?
Hugely so. It's actually a very important fundamental aspect of the App Fabric paradigm. It's just the simplest possible canvas that you could deploy. It could even be a blank canvas. Or let's say it's a canvas with a single text field, a single button. That canvas is protected by the same security as the biggest, broadest App Fabric that's ever been developed out there. And these are very important, and it's one of the classic risks is if an application is small and there's a particular focus, then ensuring the security, especially as you say, some of the very common methods of attacking a database, that is time and cost and money and is not necessarily always going to be perfect. However, with the App Fabric, that's something that's central to the development, and all of everything that's gone into building that fabric is this security. So by using the App Fabric as the container, as the host for canvases, or indeed for plugins, that security is built in and really baked into the very core, specifically in order to focus upon providing security for exactly the sort of issues that you mentioned. I'm a big fan of Microsoft and the Windows platform, and indeed we've been careful throughout to leverage everything in terms of security that the .NET platform and Windows does provide. For instance, in terms of validating user inputs, these sorts of things, there are very good functions within Windows and within the .NET framework that help us to do this. And by relying upon these industry standards, it means that we're not at risk of making simple mistakes ourselves. Obviously, we do other things as well, but by having these fundamental building blocks in place through the .NET framework, that gives us a very solid base and a very reliable starting point. For instance, when it comes to implementation of the various hashing and encryption algorithms, we make extensive use of hashing and encryption. It's fundamental security that's pretty much non-debatable. We use the Microsoft implementations of these. Now, of course, by keeping Windows therefore up to date, using automatic updates, it means one is always using the industry standard implementations of these algorithms, and we're not trusting our own where there might potentially be risks. They might potentially be perfect, but there might potentially be risks. And by using the industry standard, we're on a very solid base.
How are you safeguarding passwords?
Passwords we hash always, and we use per user salts. So even two users with the same password will have a different hash value in the database. Then similarly, across different app fabrics, they will have different, you can choose different hash functions. You supply different salts at the application level as well. So just across the board, we're using industry standard methods for hashing and salting passwords.
And what if a user forgets a password?
Then there'll be reset functionality. That's part of the overarching app fabric functionality. So the people who are building the actual business logic into the app don't need to worry about that. It is there as part of the app fabric. But the super user developer can tweak that and alter or completely change, if they want to, that functionality. It's all within the app fabric.
So data privacy is such a big issue at the moment, Andrew, particularly because I think the GDPR has heightened so much awareness about the subject of data privacy. What is happening within the Encanvas architecture to help organizations to address that issue?
A lot of things is the answer. And there are potentially two different classes of things. So first of all, there's just the fundamental technical security, the password security, the prevention of various different attacks, the sort of the just standard protection against having the data hacked. So that's an important function in ensuring the security of data. But then there's another one which is almost more fundamental and comes down to architecture and the platform design, whereby since the data sources are sitting on the cloud, the data will never reside on people's laptops, for instance, in case it gets left on the train, or in case somebody wanders off with your data. There are controls in place, and it's quite possible they were never given permission in the first place to download all of the data. So just fundamentally, it's about the husbandry of the data, as I say, not just in the technical sense of making it secure, although that has to be there and is, but also just at a more basic, more general level, whereby the data is kept in secure spaces where it's supposed to be, where it can be backed up, it's not going to wander off. But then also the people who are interacting with it aren't given more access than they are allowed by the administrators. So it's a very fundamental security, and this is something that's been central to our ethos throughout the design of the Encanvas platform.
In the Encanvas architecture, Andrew, what are you most proud of when it comes to the security aspects of the technology?
The security aspects of the technology are, first of all, one of the sources of pride is just, as you say, remaining focused on security throughout the years of development of the platform. But I think the answer is slightly meta, in the sense that these are they're good and focused and detailed. All of our security implementations and structures and methods that are put into place. But I think the thing I'm most proud of is the fact that the Encanvas structure, the cloud, the app fabric, means that the simplest, tiniest thing instantly inherits the full massive dump of security that's gone into the platform. So one can take that and spend all the time, but if that is in any way specific to any given project, then your next project is at risk. It doesn't matter how good a job you did before, you've now got to do it all over again, and maybe you won't do as good a job, you'll miss something this time. With Encanvas, with the Encanvas cloud, everything is secured by 100% of all of the effort that's gone into security and all of the things around security. And I think that's probably, even though it's a slightly theoretical and abstract answer, to me it's very meaningful, even in a real, very day-to-day, real, touchable, tangible sense.